I shall kick off at this stage. So my name's Ruth Bradbury. I'm Senior Navigator working with DigitalHealth.London and specifically on the Accelerator programme. I lead our team of navigators who work to support our companies on the programme. So hopefully that you already know that DigitalHealth.London programme supports some of the best and high potential digital innovations that can transform and support the NHS. We're now in our 7th year and we remain a sector leading and highly competitive programme. To date, our accelerator has supported 143 innovative digital health companies with over 600 additional contracts signed by these companies during the accelerator support period. So each year, our accelerator programme works with around 20 digital health companies over a 12-month period, giving bespoke support and advice. We deliver a programme of expert-led workshops and events and support the brokering of meaningful connections between innovators and the NHS organisations who have those specific challenges. So we're now open for applications and we're looking for the next generation of digital health innovations that can support our NHS to recover and to help patients better self-manage their own health. We've got a nice varied agenda for you this morning. We will hear from our Senior Programme Manager, Yasmin Stinchcombe, and also one of our NHS navigators, Jess Chu, on their roles on the accelerator. And then we're also really fortunate today to be able to hear from Jonathan Knight, who is co-founder and CEO of an accelerator alumnus company, Tofogo. And Jonathan will be able to talk through his experience of being on our accelerator programme, not once, but actually twice. So we're really fortunate to have Jonathan along today. As I said earlier, the main purpose of the webinar is to answer your questions. So after we've heard from our speakers, then the time will be dedicated to answering your questions. And your question might be directed or maybe answered by somebody different on the panel. Your questions might be about how the programme works, your company's eligibility, about the application form. So we welcome any question, big or small. Please start thinking of those. Hopefully you've got some thoughts already prepared. So at this stage, I am now going to hand over to Yasmin, who's our Senior Programme Manager. And Yasmin's going to tell us a little bit about her role in the programme and her experience with working with Digital Health London. Good morning, Yasmin.
Morning, everyone. Lovely to kind of see you all. Really looking forward to answering your questions. So I am, as Bruce already mentioned, I'm the Senior Programme Manager for Digital Health London. I've actually been with the programme for 3 years now, and I started off as a navigator role. So that bespoke mentor, kind of working with companies on the ground and kind of helping to broker the relationships, and then moved over into this role. So my role within the programme is very much operational. So I'm responsible for looking after all the metrics that we submit and kind of supporting kind of with the various outputs. So I'm here today to answer any questions around probably the application form and who's suitable for the programme. I will hand over to Jess.
Thanks, Yasmin. Morning, everyone. So I'm Jess. I'm an NHS navigator. I've been with DigitalHealth.London for coming up to 1.5 years now. So I've supported companies on last year's accelerator cohort and then most recently the DigitalHealth.London's Launchpad cohort. My role as a navigator, I support the companies and try and really get to know the companies and get to know what they need and try and think outside of the kind of the normal little bubble that they might think within. Sorry, Jonathan. But what we do as navigators is we can kind of identify other opportunities for the companies that they might not necessarily be aware of or kind of see. But it's a great role, and having a navigator by your side, maybe Jonathan will attest to this, but it's quite nice having another person there with you. I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Thanks, Ruth. As mentioned, I've been on the accelerator twice actually. So I'm here as CEO and co-founder at Tofogo, and our product is Compassly, a digital competency passport for nurses and other healthcare professionals to develop and improve their clinical skills throughout their career. And we have just finished cohort 6 through 2022. But yeah, I've worked in healthcare for over a decade now, and I took my previous startup successfully through the very first cohort of the accelerator, which feels far too long ago now. But the fact that I put being part of the 6th accelerator as a priority for this company, for Tofogo, probably tells you the importance and value I put upon this. It's kind of hard to actually answer what we got out of it, because there's been a real breadth of experience and value in terms of what we got out of doing the accelerator. I would say that covers some of the specific knowledge that we've been able to learn and gain from around evidence generation, the absolute clarity on our value proposition, communications, something that we were pretty weak on, I would say, going into it. But more broadly, also confidence in what we're doing and the refinement of our proposition and our pitch and how we go about working with the NHS. And that probably includes as well broadening our experience with the NHS. My background in terms of health tech has been quite heavily in nursing in the acute sector. And through the work with the navigators and more generally, I think we've been able to broaden that out into other professional groups, other parts of the NHS, including things like integrated care systems. And that includes new relationships and prospective customers. Being the NHS, this does take quite a long time for those that haven't experienced it. You're not going to have any overnight successes, I think. So these are more opportunities that are leading into, but I feel pretty confident as to where those are going. And I know that we wouldn't have got to that clarity and to those relationships and that progress on our own without the support of the programme. So in terms of what the actual experience was like and what we went through, I'm quite a dorky person, so I actually tracked all of this so I could easily look back through it. I think we had about 30 events through the year, one way or another. 4 full-day networking events in person, which were fantastic. 4 quarterly specific sessions on our company with wider participants. And most of the rest were then specific topics. I'm touched on some of the other ones. The main ones that we did a series on research and evidence and value proposition and communication, but also a wide mix of topics on recruitment, investment, information governance, intellectual property and the like. And the idea there being some you will be great at already and some you won't have a clue on. And really for us, it was making sure that we raised the game on all of those so that we're consistently strong and without any gaps across all of those. Even the ones I felt we were strong on, actually, it was a very good opportunity to take an honest look at what we're doing, have some critical friends come in and tell us what they think about what we're doing, and to reflect on that with the experience of other people going through the same sort of thing. And I'd say that's a real part of it as well. You're part of a cohort of 30 and you've got other co-founders and leaders and experts in their fields to share ideas with, to share challenges with, to gain from their experience. And I found those discussions with other founders and the like tremendously helpful too. Someone else facing similar problems who may have solved it already, or even if they haven't solved it, are thinking about it as well. And I'll come back to this theme. I did pretty much all of those sessions. You know, it's a commitment in terms of your time, but as the cliche goes, the more you put out, the more you get, more you put in, the more you get out. Ruth was my navigator, so I obviously have to be nice about the role of the navigator in this, but I wouldn't be here if I didn't have lovely things to say. Your experience will vary based on your needs, and that's kind of the point for me of a navigator. It's not a one-size-fits-all program, and your navigator can help steer you, but will also adapt to what your needs are as a company, and the advice they give you will get you out of your bubble, I think, is just put it there. And I certainly saw the navigation role as navigating through the accelerator itself, making sure that you're getting the most out of the accelerator, and then navigating more broadly with what you're trying to do with your company and how you're working with the NHS. But to give you a feel for it, every couple of weeks or so, we regularly check in, Ruth and I, but lots of other little discussions around that and follow-ups that came out of that. And then a more quarterly, more formal planning session as well to make sure we were on track with what we were looking to achieve. Also then on top of that, some specific planning to make sure we got the most out of the networking days and other specific events. We had quite an ambitious set of objectives, and off the back of that, we didn't get to all of them. And I think we would have failed if we got to all of them in terms of setting ambitious enough objectives. But I think we did very well and worked our way through pretty much all of the main ones that we were looking to achieve. And then the final part of the navigator for me is actually probably not one I expected, but a very good sort of sounding board, critical friends. Ruth might say occasionally just me complaining or screaming a little bit silently, you know, that opportunity to actually have someone there who's outside the company, has an NHS perspective, but is not, you know, someone that you're trying to work with or sell with directly in the NHS, and I found that very useful as well. So the last bit I've been asked to sort of talk about beyond the our experiences, then any advice for companies applying. And seeing the questions come in, actually, this might relate to this a little bit. Check you're at the right stage. And the main thing I'd say on this is actually, are you and your product or your service ready to benefit from the program? You can only do this once unless you start up another company and come back like I did. But as you are, you can only do this once. So are you ready to benefit from the program? Are you ready to commit the time? Is your product and proposition ready to be accelerated, I suppose, in terms of where you're going? Now, you could wait too long as well, you know, to not benefit from it, but really make sure that you are ready and you can commit to that. As part of that, I'd say be really clear on what you're looking to get out of it. Think about what the proposition of the accelerator is and think what you're looking to get out of it. And that's for your application and interview. But obviously then for the program itself, you know, the clearer you can be around what you're looking to do, I think the clearer the support you can get out of it. That can change as you learn and develop, but I think that clarity is important. Be sure that you can commit. From my perspective, that should be the founder or the equivalent leading the way, and bringing in relevant colleagues. I mentioned those 30 odd events. I think I missed one or two and they were directly conflicting sales meetings or something like that. So I think you have to be ready to commit to it. For the actual application process, it's the basics. I mean, read the freaking questions. Like DHL, I think Digital Health London do not hide what they expect to see. So I would be absolutely clear in how you answer that and get someone to check how you've answered that. Be very clear around what your value proposition is to the NHS and its patients. It's not a commercial accelerator. The purpose of the Digital Health London Accelerator is for the NHS and patients. And don't just revamp your seed round pitch deck or something about that. You know, be really clear on that purpose and be clear on your strengths, but be honest where you need help as well. You know, that the purpose of the accelerator to help the companies, you need to be clear on where you need the help. And then just the basics. I mean, don't do it the day before. You know, give yourself some time, give yourself some space to reflect on it and come back to it. And my final thing is, I mean, if all of the above applies, then definitely go for it. I don't know anyone who's regretted being part of the accelerator.
Thank you, Jonathan. Some real words of wisdom. I particularly kind of just wanted to pull out a few things that you said. Something there around the commitment, and I think that's really important, whether it's as you know, you as an individual from your company, or whether it's commitment across the business as well. So, you know, Jonathan, as he said, sort of he was kind of the sole person mostly coming to our events or our workshops and being that point person. But we also have other companies where there've been, you know, multiple different people from the business who've engaged with the program, and that's great. We're happy to do that, but it's about that commitment piece. And then I think the other thing I really wanted to flag was around that network and the community. The thing that, you know, that we hear so often is that being the innovator, being the entrepreneur, it's quite a lonely world. And you've got your vision and you've got your passion. But having and bouncing off, you know, people in similar positions is so helpful. And, you know, one of the things we try and work really hard on is bringing together our companies and our businesses so that you do have that sounding board. So I'm really pleased that, you know, they were some of the things that Jonathan pulled out as well. So thank you very much, Jonathan. Okay, so we're going to move on to our question session now. I can see there are a couple of, there's three or so questions in the chat at the moment. So I know the first one here is from Chris. And Chris, I don't know if you want to come on and tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So thank you for the introduction. We are in the business of primary care here in Poland, and I have one of the questions related with the financial information. So here in Poland, the legal requirements are a little bit different when it comes to accounts. So my question is, can you a little elaborate on what sort of information do you need, for what time period? Yeah, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I think I might direct this question towards Yasmin and potentially Sarah as well. Certainly, what I would say first off is, as a Polish-based company, we would be really interested in receiving your application. So we're certainly open to international companies, and I think it's really important that we understand different requirements and regulations in different countries. So really key to kind of make that clear within your application. But Yasmin, Sarah, did you have anything to add to Chris's query?
Sure, I can kind of kick off. So it's not necessarily a mandatory part of the application form. It's there to kind of bolster the application. The reason why we ask for it is we as an organisation would really like to see some evidence of a company being able to have at least a 12 to 18 month run rate. And the reason why we would like that is, first of all, to demonstrate that you're a company and you're functioning, but also a large part of the accelerator, as kind of we've already mentioned, is about brokering those relationships between the NHS and social care. And as an organisation that's brokering those relationships, we don't want to be putting kind of companies in front of kind of key organisations that might turn into contracts if actually there isn't enough kind of run rate for the company to kind of maintain kind of that commitment to that kind of those different contracts, because as we say, we're here to support the company, but we're really here about to kind of bolster the NHS. So if you do have any kind of account information that you're happy to kind of share with us, that's fantastic. You don't have to. It's just really about kind of giving that additional evidence of kind of the business credibility behind kind of where you're up to. And it doesn't have to be account information necessarily. It can also be looking at, you don't have to be like a profitable company as well to be on our accelerator. It's kind of looking at how you're funded. So is it through grants? Is it kind of through out of pocket? Is it through investments? So it's kind of any additional information that you think might be helpful is kind of for that section. Sarah, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Does look like it.
Yep.
Is that helpful, Chris?
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. From my side, it's enough. So what I get from it is that I need kind of to give some kind of evidence that we have enough of a run rate to go for the accelerator program, even if we are not, because we are revenue generated, but we're not yet profitable.
That's fine. And there is a section within the application form where you can kind of go through and describe that as well. So
okay,
it's all that. The question you're referring to specifically is around kind of additional evidence if it's as appropriate or as you feel is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Yasmin. Okay, so I'm going to come to Brandon next. Brandon, do you want to tell us a little bit more around your question? Or maybe I will read through Brandon's question. So Brandon, it sounds though you're looking to start a DigitalHealth spin out. And I see from your name, I can see university. So it sounds like it's a university spin out. You haven't incorporated, do you need to be incorporated prior to applying? Again, I'll probably pass this question back to Yasmin at this stage. Yasmin.
So you don't need to be fully incorporated as you apply, but by the time you start the program, we would want you to be incorporated, and we would probably need to see evidence of that. So that's part of the due diligence that we'll do as kind of part of the application process. The one thing I will say though, and I think Jonathan also alluded to this, is making sure that your company is at the right stage to really benefit from all of the aspects of the accelerator. So the accelerator is really around brokering those relationships and kind of supporting companies with the spread and the adoption of the digital tool or innovation or the service kind of within the NHS and social care. So if you are at that point where you're not fully incorporated yet, it might be that you might be a little bit too early, and therefore you might want to look at one of our other programs as they open up in the future, where we actually have particular programs that support kind of that earlier stage company around the introduction and to navigating to have those conversations rather than that kind of spread and adoption. But yeah, that's kind of it. And also in terms of taking the incorporation there, I think it can be quite a quick turnaround. So ideally have it for your application, but again, it's thinking about whether or not you're at the right stage.
Great, thanks Yasmin. Hope that's helpful, Brandon. Jim, you've asked a question around your company's non-digital. Are you ineligible? Typically we would say yes, but I don't know if you want to perhaps give us a little bit more background to what you do. Maybe there is a digital element there in some way.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I only got to refer to this call a couple of days ago by somebody else in their health information improvement network. And she mentioned, I described that I'm a GP of 25 years. I'm in a startup that's designed a piece of innovative exercise equipment, but it's non-digital. And also NHS Clinical Entrepreneur, which sounds very similar to this project, but obviously this project is more about companies than it is about individuals. It's not a workforce development plan like the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. So really, it was just about, is there something similar to Digital Health London as an accelerator for non-digital startups?
Oh, Jonathan, you probably have far better sight of this than I do, but I'm thinking there are different commercial accelerators, aren't there, that are probably going to be suited to the startup community?
It's an interesting space. So if I've understood that right, Jim, it's effectively a piece of hardware, for want of a better word, but not like a phone hardware, a mechanical kind of device.
Yeah.
I think even the commercial accelerators, most are set up around some sort of software platform that may also have a hardware element to it rather than something that is purely hardware. I wonder whether, I mean, you've touched on it, something like the stuff that Tony Young does out of the innovation hubs and things like that are better suited. It's a bit of a trickier space for that, so I'm not aware of any commercial ones that particularly fend towards it.
Okay.
I would say a lot of the content on the accelerator wouldn't be as relevant anyway. You're not going to, have the information governance stuff. You're not going to be a fit with the procurement stuff. So I would echo that. I'll have a think while others are talking if there's anything else I can think of that. But probably, have you reached out to Tony Young at all and some of the stuff that he's doing?
Yeah, I'm already part of his program. I'm already part of NHS Clinical Entrepreneur. It was really just to find out, is there an accelerator for the company? Because obviously that's really a workforce development thing. So it's me personally that's on the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program rather than my company. Yeah. And it's really about how some of the functions of the company might be helped by an accelerator similar to this, but obviously in the non-digital arena.
Okay, well, we'll put our thinking caps on and see if we can, if we're aware of some of the different options.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate your question. I'm going to move down to Lauren next. Lauren, do you want to come on and talk through your question?
Hi everyone. So my colleague James is currently in the process of sorting out the application, and he just reached out to me yesterday and said, will you just jump on this webinar and just ask some questions? I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I'm the marketing coordinator for Ned Holdings Group, which Piotr is part, one of the companies within the group. So obviously I've got my marketing cap on, and I'm thinking about terms of support, in terms of messaging. Obviously there's the events and things like that which very much kind of fall under the marketing remit, but it's more kind of around the basic comms, that kind of collaboration. Is there any opportunities on the accelerator program for things like that?
I'm going to direct this question, I think I'm going to ask Megan, who hasn't been introduced on the call so far, to maybe pick this up, and also then Jess might want to come in a little bit in terms of how she's worked with companies around sort of the comms marketing side of things. But Megan, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan. I'm the communications manager for DigitalHealth.London. So yeah, I am the dedicated comms support for the programme. And that means a few different things, but essentially I'm here to support all the companies on their programme with their comms. We run a series of comms workshops throughout the course of the year. The first one usually focuses on building your comms strategy and messaging and that kind of thing. And then we'll do more specific ones about all kinds of things, from tone of voice to social media to working with media. So we'll really dive a bit deeper into certain topics. On top of that, we also offer one-to-ones for all of the different companies on the programme. So usually following that first sort of comm strategy session, we'll open out if anyone wants to have a call with myself or another member of the comms team. We're happy to do that, and we can sort of dive a bit deeper into your company's messaging and seeing where we can sort of help refine that. And then we also offer sort of more general support in terms of amplifying any like news, blogs, that kind of thing that you're working on at the moment. If you're doing a specific campaign, we've got high following on our channels, on our newsletter. So we're always happy to share what you're doing from that sense as well. So there's sort of a few different areas that we're always happy to support with comms.
Thanks, Megan. Jess, I wondered, are you maybe able to comment a little bit on the sort of the value that you've seen with your companies around that sort of that comms work and that comms input?
Yeah, I'm happy to big up Megan. So first of all, I guess what I think is really good, Lauren, is that Piotr have you. So a few of the companies that I worked with didn't have kind of in-house comms and marketing, and they really struggled to kind of prioritize it. So it's clear that Piotr is really important for them. Megan's team really helped all of my companies. There's also a feature that we do on the accelerator called SME of the Week, where you spotlight a different accelerator company across all our socials, and you send out kind of to our wider ecosystem a blog and a short 60-second video. So there's loads of opportunities with kind of highlighting our companies. And additionally, we really support our companies in applying for things like awards, which I think is fantastic for marketing. So as a navigator, I did help some of my companies when the opportunities for awards came up, and also with their applications as well. And I did rope in Megan's team for that as well. So yeah, it's invaluable, the kind of support that the comms team offer to the companies.
Great, thank you.
Hopefully that was helpful, Lauren.
It was, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So our next question is thinking a bit more about readiness, your sort of readiness and stage of coming onto our accelerator. Now, I must apologise, I cannot pronounce the name of the person who has asked this question. So I don't know if you want to come on to screen, if you want to add anything more to that. Hi there.
Sure. Hi, my name is Xiao Lei. So we are an early stage startup in the digital health space. Just to follow up on Jonathan's point, because I think he raised a very good point that I've been thinking of these days as well. Like, when do you think is the right timing for a startup to join, like to be ready to be accelerated? Yeah, if you can elaborate a little bit more the status when you joined, and yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
You'd like to pick that up, Jonathan?
Yeah, I am, and I should say from the other side, like also going back to the earlier question about accounts and things like that from Chris, we joined pre-revenue, and we probably joined a year after incorporation or something like that. So we did. I wouldn't want to give the impression this is something for like 5 to 10-year-old companies and things like that. It is around your ability to take advantage of that acceleration. Now, I had worked in this space for quite a long time, so I knew that where we needed to be and where we were going to. I think the thing you want to bear in mind is, will you be ready when you are in front of someone in the NHS to say, we've got something that you can actually start to look at and consider adopting? And that's probably the biggest test of it. If you still need to do some work, if you've got a medical device that needs to go through certification, or if you've got just sort of like an MVP that's just getting its first bits of user feedback, that's probably a bit early. If you've got something that has had some tests and use cases, but you don't have any customers yet, I think that could be okay, from my perspective, and the navigators can work around that. If you've got something that's got very good adoption in primary care, but you've never done anything in secondary care, and you're looking to grow the company into that, then that feels a good use case for me as well. So I don't think you'd put any rules around it in terms of, revenue or not, or what that level looks like, customer cases or not. It's all around, in a few months' time, and you've got that brilliant opportunity with someone who's interested, are you ready to do it? Do you have a product that's ready to go? Do you have a team that's ready to go? Your value proposition can be shaped, but is there actually a value proposition there and a benefits case to be shaped? That's what I'd put it down to. I don't know from the call. I mean, if you want to test a little bit of where you are, we could, I guess, give you some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe just following up on that. So from the NHS doctor's perspective, right? We have like a digital health app basically, and it hasn't been certified yet. But we are in the process of publishing some academic papers to publish some of initial data. And also we have already built up use cases with insurance companies as a more like a wellness tool. And from the doctor's perspective, what do you think they're looking out of this potential collaboration? What is most important to them?
I think one of the things that we're really kind of looking for from all of the companies who apply is that there is real value in what you're doing, that it's meeting an NHS need or a problem or a challenge at the moment. So and I think, as Jonathan's talked about, if you're able to articulate your value proposition in terms of what you do, the problem that you're looking to meet and to solve, the impact that you're looking to have, and whether that be at this point in time around sort of, based on models data as opposed to actual data that you've collected, because you might not be at that stage. That's really what we're looking for, is that do you understand kind of the market that you're trying to enter into, and does your value proposition really sort of meet that need? Would be my sense at this stage. I think it's difficult to really, every technology is different, and every user in the NHS is going to be different, whether they be a patient, whether they be a clinician. So it's really making sure that you understand that context that you're working in.
I would just say from the sort of activities that you were talking about there, it feels like you are ready. I mean, would be my steer on it, or certainly well worth considering. If you're starting to get evidence that can go into a paper, then I think you've got quite a lot of what you need to be ready to accelerate. I mean, that's a very superficial scan of it, but nothing there sounded discouraging to me.
Cool. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Yasmin, do you want to add?
Yeah, just to quickly add, I think also when we say that, maybe this is about spread and adoption within the NHS and social care, and this is whether or not you've already got kind of evidence of being there. You don't necessarily have to have had a pilot within the NHS per se to kind of get there, but if you've got evidence that people like your product and they're using it, make sure you really bring that out kind of in your application. So if you're working with insurance companies, there's no reason why you couldn't go into the NHS. You don't necessarily have to kind of have that down on paper, especially if you're an international company. It might be you've got some traction kind of in your own country, and actually because you've got that evidence, it's kind of looking at, can you lift and shift and then spread within the NHS. So I think it's also kind of really how you articulate what, as kind of Ruth said, what the problem you're trying to solve, how your product tries to solve it, and kind of what evidence you have, whether it's kind of in academic paper, if it's because of usability, if it's anything. Is it because you've actually worked with clinicians to kind of help build out that product, kind of making sure you're really articulating that. And that's also how we can kind of gauge kind of if you're the kind of the right fit at the right stage as well. I think that's quite important to kind of build into your application when you're writing it.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Hope that helps, Shelley. Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Good. I'm going to come. Well, Ramsey has popped a question in the chat, but unfortunately they've had to drop off. But they just say they're going to watch the recording. So we'll perhaps pick up their question. The first part I think we've just talked about in terms of company stage of readiness, but the second part is quite practical in terms of is the program delivered virtually or in person? And I think Jonathan alluded to that a little bit in his earlier answer. But Jess, do you want to pick up this question around how we deliver the program?
Yeah, so the main bulk of the program is delivered virtually. So that's all the workshops and the kind of learning sessions. We do have, we did on the last cohort, we had 4 face-to-face networking days, which were kind of dotted around London. And then we had a final showcase event, which was in London as well. And that was face-to-face. But primarily it is virtual, but we did ask everyone to attend our networking days, the face-to-face events as a priority. So yeah, the mixture of both really.
And I suppose I would add as well, Jonathan talked about those times where you meet with your navigator, and again it's often been, I guess, easier to meet virtually, so we kind of work through Teams, but also where we're all kind of geographically quite close by, it's not unusual for a navigator to meet up with their company, either at their offices or maybe meet somewhere at a coffee shop or something like that. So we do try and encourage those face-to-face interactions, because I think that's also really important in terms of building relationships. And sometimes as well, there are opportunities to meet virtually and face-to-face with different people from NHS organisations as well. So again, there are different ways that things can often spin out. But we did a lot of work post-COVID in terms of determining should we continue a virtual delivery of our programme, and I think there was a lot of positive response that virtual delivery can make things much more accessible in terms of the time of day. We are reducing our travel and so contributing to kind of green sustainability. So we've tried to ensure that we make things as accessible and practical for people, whilst recognising it's good to have that actual face-to-face contact too. Okay, I think we've exhausted all the questions that are in our chat, but I just wonder, I know we haven't heard from Sunit or Ali at all, who are also on the call at the moment. I don't know if either of you have got any burning questions still. Maybe not. To wait the required length of time for people to be able to unmute and get their brains in gear. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Ruth. Thank you. No, I don't actually. I think everybody's asked the questions that were on my mind. Sorry for joining late, but
no problem at all.
Really helpful to hear everybody's input on things. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. No problem at all. I'm just going to perhaps just open up to my colleagues on the call, just in case there's anything that you want to kind of add as a final thought, or anything you've thought of in relation to a question.
I have a question, please. Yes. For Jonathan. Sorry, Jonathan. I have a quick question, because it's a bit difficult from a navigator's perspective to know how much time that you guys have to commit. But obviously we see it from our perspective, and we would love you to commit all your time to us. But how much time realistically do you think that you have to commit to the programme? Because with my experiences, it varied between the companies. Some companies invited me to their team meetings. Some companies we had separate separate navigator SME meetings. But yeah, I just wondered what you thought.
Yeah, so I'd sort of break that into two pieces really. So there's the face-to-face time, and that's not particularly onerous, I would say, because it's spread out over the year. And if you take that sort of cadence that I talked about earlier of around 30 sessions, 4 of those were full day sessions, but the rest were anywhere between an hour and 3 hours. That is not a huge commitment in time. But if you want to get the most out of it, for the evidence generation, for example, I think we've ended up through that process writing about 30 pages going into detail as we went through that process of how we were going to generate evidence, how we were going to in the future publish that evidence, how we were going to actually work with our NHS partners to capture that evidence. Now, we didn't have to do that, but we wouldn't really have got very much out of those sessions. Similarly, Ruth may have invited me to talk to someone or to host a meeting with someone. Now, you can turn up and wing that if you want, but you probably won't get very far. So any session that I was introduced to through my navigator, I typically put the rule of thumb, you need to spend at least twice as long as the length of the session preparing. And I might spend, a day preparing for that meeting to make sure I absolutely nailed it, because those chances are thin and far between, really, to really get those great opportunities. So it comes down to that, and again, that cliche of you get out what you put in. I wouldn't undercommit to that. And some of the sessions, when we talk about the comms sessions, I think the team probably underplayed that a little bit. They actually bring in external expertise from PR agencies and from social media marketing agencies. And they bring with the tools with them, right? We had SomX come along and bring their frameworks for your vision and mission and translating that into your messages. We probably spent 2 or 3 days working through the outputs of that to really help shape our message off what we'd learned in the session. So if you're cruising it, then you can probably get away with, an hour or 2 a week. If you want to make the most out of it, I would say it's several days a month to really get the value out of it.
Oh, it's great to hear. I love it. I love it that you kind of put so much energy and so much kind of thought into how you wanted to kind of get something back from what we offer. So yeah, great to hear. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay. So I haven't spotted any other burning questions that have come through. Sarah's made a point in the chat. Sorry, Sarah, I've just spotted that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you just want to, do you want to elaborate at all?
It was only just building on what Jonathan was just saying. Something that I've really noticed over the last few years is that you will need us at different points for different sort of amounts of time. So if you're, as I said in there, if you're fundraising at the time, pretty much if you're either doing CQC or fundraising, you really haven't got the headspace to actually spend a lot of time on the program. However, if you're looking at increasing your stakeholder management, communication of your product, looking at entrance points, then you do end up spending a bit more time with us. So that's what I would say is one of the benefits of the program, because it's a very bespoke nature. And through those 4 quarterly meetings that Jonathan was discussing, it allows us to talk to you about what over the next quarter, what's really important to you as a company or you as an individual innovator, and we will support you through that time. That's what I was.
Thanks, Sarah.
Just to quickly add on that as well, I think one of the fantastic things around this particular accelerator is that we really do support the company as a whole. So whilst we do kind of ask for a main point of contact, as Jonathan said, to kind of help build those relationships, actually we're very happy to invite a variety of different people from the different companies to the different workshops as it's appropriate. And it could be the fact that it's very specific, you're working in communication and marketing, and therefore you're the right person to come to that. It might be that you've actually got new members of the team that are trying to learn more about the NHS and social care, and actually that's the reason they want to come for their own personal development. So I think that's one of the great things about our accelerator, is that we're very happy to have different people depending on the needs of the company and also the needs of the individuals. And the one thing I will also say, when you're doing your application, please be as clear as possible when you're kind of doing your pitch or describing what your product does, kind of really trying to articulate that. That's probably the best place to spend your time on the application form, really kind of articulating what your product does, how it helps, and then also what your needs are and why you think the accelerator could help. I think those are the key bits to really focus on when doing your application.
Right. Thanks, Jasmine. Okay. I haven't seen any additional questions come in, so I'm going to say at this point we'll wrap up our session. Thank you so much to you for joining and asking your questions today. Really, really great to hear you're really engaged with our process. Thank you to Jonathan for telling us about his experience, and thanks to Yasmin, Megan, Jess, and Sarah for answering those questions as well. We are a team, and I think it's about our collective knowledge at this stage, and also whilst we're on the programme as well, that I think is really, really valuable. Just to highlight to you all, we've put some links in the chat, which hopefully you have seen, but essentially what you will be able to do there is click through to read more information about the accelerator. Hopefully you've been there before, otherwise you wouldn't be here on this webinar, or you're unlikely to be on this webinar if you haven't seen that already, but just to remind you. Also take a look at our FAQs. So we've collated lots of questions over the years that have come out of sessions just like this. So if you've got a question, it is highly likely it may well be answered within the FAQs. And then there's also a video to support you with completing your application form. So it's kind of like a walkthrough step by step of each section of our application form. So that's, I will flag that one as a good one to watch. And also then the final thing to say is that our applications will close at 23:59. So 1 minute to midnight on the 3rd of April. So that's a Monday. So you've got all weekend plus the Monday to finish your application. So hopefully that's quite a nice strategic date for everybody, rather than it being a last minute on a Sunday night type of job. But thank you so much. We'll finish there, and good luck with your applications. And we hope to be able to read more about your companies. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.